Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks, and today we have Daniel, the ESTP, and he's the husband of the creator of Psychology Junkie, made by the lovely Susan Storm. I highly recommend checking that website out, so the link is in the description. Show them some love. The one thing that is like vastly amazing about their site that I don't see in other typology sites yet is their accurate tests that they have so far, because it gets sensors right better than most free tests that I've tried. So if you want to try their free test, MBTI test, like by all means, go ahead. I love it. And welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I've been looking forward to our talk here for a while, so glad to finally get into it.
Yes, I'm really excited to have this talk too and clear misconceptions about SE and to shed some light on how it's like as a SE Dom. So how is life like as an SE Dom?
Well, I mean, let's see. What is life like? It's all about making the most of what's happening right now, as far as just a general overview for me. So being a perceiving type, to make SE my dominant function, I'm very fluid most of the time. I like to leave things open-ended and just have like this ongoing list of all the things that I know should or need to happen, and then just plugging them in at the most opportune moment when it arrives. Um, so that's like a big part of how I deal with day-to-day life and things that I know I need to get done. It's very opportunistic, I think would be a great word for it.
Yes, I feel like SE users really know how to notice the resources in their environment and to make the most out of it. My brother, he knows the best restaurants. He's an ESTP, like you, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows like the best places to eat, the best places to go, which stock is the best to invest in. My brother is an investor, and he's very quick to actually notice trends. And he's like, well, this stock is doing well and this one isn't, because he has like a really good sense of the reality around him. So he's like, because I'm keeping track of the reality, I know when things are being updated. So I know when to capitalize on something that has been updated in the sensory.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And SE users are like SE DOMs are great at crisis situations. And Susan had a tweet about how you were great at like handling a situation that was with your kids and how you dealt with it very like calmly and quickly.
Yeah, I mean, when you have kids, there's always going to be crisis situations at some point or other. So we've had a few. Definitely had a few, accidents, people falling over on their bikes and scratching up their knees pretty bad, or, I mean, it's just the way it is. And for my benefit, I spent 11 years in the military, and they did a lot of training with us for when we deployed, going into combat, how to do a lot of self-aid and buddy care, being able to just apply even just basic CPR and first aid, but doing it super efficiently and being able to do it under, duress situations. So when you're in your own home with your own family and a situation comes up, it makes it that much easier to deal with. So for me, it's almost a no-brainer. You take whatever kid's hurt and you get the supplies you need and you just deal with it, and it's not really something I mentally am like going down through a checklist. It's just automatic. It's almost second nature to just take care of the things. When I know how to do something, just make it happen.
Yeah, it's like this zero delay between reality and you have this like symbiotic relationship with everything around you. And it's like my mother, she's an ESFP, and she's 60, but she has the reflexes of someone who is 20 years old, and
Sure.
it's very impressive. And she notices everything in her surroundings. When something makes a slight noise, or like if something is like at her peripheral, she notices it. So there's a large terrain that SE takes in.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's something that for my family, which are um, mainly SI users, um, they were amazed at just, I'd go to a class and come back, and my sister would go to the same classroom for something, and then she would like quiz me on different things, specific details that she'd look at, and I had no idea what she would ask about, but then I could tell her those specific details, the brand on the projector, for instance, or I mean just things like that that I don't even realize I'm taking it in. It's just part of my environment, and so just paying attention to it is something that comes naturally.
Yes, it's like you're very observant.
Hmm.
And my brother, he's an ESTP, and I know it's a stereotype that judges like clean environments, but my ESTP brother hates messes. Like, he's like, you need to keep everything clean because it bugs him when it's not.
Hmm.
And I think it has something to do with the being SE Dom as well, because it's like, uh, what are your thoughts?
I would agree. I can remember even as a kid, I hated to do things that would like get my hands particularly messy. Like I wasn't one to be like, oh, mud, let's go play in it. Right. Like I still to this day, like I don't like going to the beach because I hate the sand that gets everywhere and having to try to clean it up and get it off. It's impossible. And I love having things neat and organized and everything put away. And, um, it's a bit of a struggle with when you have a family with 5 kids because it's just not going to happen. And you kind of have to make peace with that. But I would say, yeah, in general, because I'm so aware of the details in my surroundings that when those are off or something isn't where it should belong, it does bug me. And I would much prefer to take an extra 5 minutes to, not set a plate down on the table next to me, but go ahead, let's take it to the kitchen, rinse it off, and put it in the dishwasher. Then I know it's all done and I can just maximize the enjoyment of my time now.
That's interesting. So when things are dirty, is it less enjoyable or is it less aesthetically pleasing? Or
Oh, by far. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I mean, before I got married and all that, like I wouldn't I wouldn't have to do a lot of cleaning often. So once a week, I would have this major cleanup where I'd make sure everything was, dusted, vacuum swept, mopped, and that. And then day to day, I always just took care of my dishes right away, or, just the day to day things that would happen. If I got a DVD off the shelf, I always put it back in the same place. It was always alphabetized. Like just that way, when I sat down to enjoy something, there was nothing kind of nagging in the back of my head knowing it wasn't where it should be, which does not sound very perceiver like. I realize this, and it's made me that fact alone has made me question whether or not I was a judger at times.
oh, you're definitely a perceiver, in my opinion. My brother has the same thing, and I've been trying to make sense of it because I know that he is a perceiver, and it seems like it's just like SC is so acutely aware of its environment. It's like kind of like if you take in the breath of the environment each time, then you're taking in that dirtiness each time, and you're like, ew, ew,
Hmm.
and it's like might as well just clean it. But it's like, yes, something my ESTP brother likes is thrill seeking. So he sometimes, when I was a child, he would throw me in the air really high. It scared other people, but like he has such good reflexes and knowing where his hands are, it's actually very safe. Like
Hmm.
it is like very smart risk taking. So I noticed that about him. And sometimes when the road is clear and he knows it's safe, he'll go faster. And because it's like interesting to him, he likes to test how he can react on the spot,
Hmm.
and it's like enjoyable to him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've done that myself all the time. It's all about for SE, they want to know what their boundaries are and they want to push those limits. They want to test them. They want to feel it out. Because you're told constantly from a young age, oh, don't do that. That's not safe or that's thing. But it's like something that ESTPs in particular, being TI auxiliary, they know the accuracy of what they're capable of, and their SE allows them to enact on it. So like you were saying, it's like smart risk taking. It's calculated. It's not just like, okay, well, there's these possibilities of all these things that could happen. It's also knowing in what order the likelihood of them happening is, and what they would do to mitigate if those things started to happen.
Yes. So like SE DOMs actually do have a like they take risks, but it's not like it would kill them. Like they know that they would make it through alive. So but if you're not an SE DOM, if you watch what's happening, you can be scared because you don't know the process of the SE. So my brother, he liked to take his car and go in a roundabout, and then like he would go like wee wee like fast, right? If you weren't my brother, you'd be scared because you're like, well, what if something bad happens? But my brother knows that nothing bad will happen because he's in control and he knows how to maneuver the car at a certain moment to make sure that it's not going to result in something bad. So yeah, risk taking when you're looking at the SE user can seem alarming, but to the SE user, like they're so skilled kinesthetically, they trust in their kinesthetic skill. So yeah.
I think that's also, it can make us come across sometimes as being a bit of a control freak, because we know we can rely on our skills, but we don't necessarily trust other people because we know not everybody could do what we do. And it's not, when we're not thinking it or saying it in a way to brag about it, it's just we've experienced it for ourselves. And so it's more of a safety thing, really.
Yes, that's so true. My brother can be kind of anal with who he lets have responsibilities, which again, I can see why you'd think you were a judger too, because if you were to misinterpret that, it's like, oh, control, judging. But that's not true, because where it's coming from, to figure out type, you always have to source it back to why they did it. So where your actions come from a very perceivery place, because you trust in your kinesthetic skill, but you know from experience that other people may not be as well versed as you, so you're hesitant there. But a judger would probably do it for a different reason. Yeah, so just wanted to clarify that. Also, a point before, you can be an ESTP and have a messy room too, but I noticed, so there's two camps. There's the ESTPs who hate messes, and they're the ESTPs who have messy places. But there's a certain rationale for the clean ESTP environments. So I just wanted to say the why is common, but you can have different outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of your environment growing up and what was expected of you at that point plays a big role on those little nuanced differences as well. Like I said, I had a lot of SI in my family growing up. Like both my parents and one of my older sisters all have SI, and my mom was adamant about chores, daily chores and cleanup and all these things that was just keeping things neat and put away. Also, she's like half Dutch, which the Dutch are notorious for their neatness, and so all of that being pushed since day one for me is also, I have no doubt, a part of that lean towards the more preferred neatness.
Yes. So Daniel has a really good point. A lot of like nurture has to do with how we express our type. So just food for thought. So I noticed with my brother and my mother, who are SE DOMs, when there's a crisis and people overreact, like they don't like it. They're like, why are you overreacting and making a big deal out of something that you could just be fixing right now? But like, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I never understood the people who would stand there and be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, okay, granted, maybe you can't believe it, but it is happening. So instead of like sitting there freaking out and being useless, do something about it, right? Like there's been a car accident, somebody's trapped inside, don't stand there freaking out, try to help them out, try to get somebody to call 911. Like there's a myriad of actions that can be taken. And I think that's a huge thing in an SE DOM's life, is it's about action. It's about actually doing something, not considering necessarily always even all the possibilities, but just taking what you have and doing something with it. You know, right, wrong, or indifferent, you just trying to do something about a situation that you're in.
Yes. And especially because like opportunities are so clear to the SE user, they're like, well, just act off of the opportunities. Why are you like staying stuck? It's like they're choosing to stay stuck, and it's kind of annoying because it's like there's a very clear opportunity here, and it feels like to the SE user like they're like, why are you choosing to not choose the opportunity, but you're choosing to lament over something you can't fix? And
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense. But I guess like not everyone has that super spidey sense of SE.
And it's an interesting, you know, I mean, my wife being an INFJ and her having, you know, inferior SE, she still likes to do things and get things done. You know, it's not necessarily as much um, a driving fact to interact in the here and now. She definitely relies more on the future focus and acting on creating the result she wants to happen in 10 years from now, right? I'm focused on maximizing the here and now, and she's looking, you know, at that 10 years in the distance. And so it creates an interesting dynamic where I'm like, well, just do this. This is clearly going to take advantage of the situation we're in now. She's like, yes, but if we do this, you know, in 3 years from now, in 5 years from now, it's going to have this impact. And so seeing and having that dynamic and realizing that just because SE is all about making the most of the current opportunity and acting immediately doesn't always guarantee the best result and outcome.
That's so true. What you said just made me think of something that like SE is like opportunities now. NI is like opportunities in the distant future. And then
Mm-hmm.
NE is like opportunity possibilities in the future. And then um I don't know what SI is. But that's what I
Yeah,
like. It seems like NI and SI look at opportunities, but in a different timeline. So that's
I know they're this can kind of be stereotyped, but they are good at the recalling and the opportunities that they've previously experienced,
yes,
and comparing it to what's now. And so that constant look at what they've been through.
yeah. It's like how can you use something from the past and bring it into now in a way that works? So it's like an opportunity too.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe each perceiving function looks at opportunities a little differently. Maybe that will be a topic of discussion
That
next
would
time.
be an interesting, yeah, that'd be an interesting one to figure out for sure.
Yes. Uh, what I notice about my ESTP brother too, sorry, I just keep relating you to him because I'm
No,
like,
that's fine.
yeah. So I don't always look for physical similarities in people, but sometimes when it's a little like more obvious, I go like, wow, they just coincidentally look very similar. And Daniel looks a bit like my brother, and it's kind of freaking me out right now. With my brother, he's like an early adopter to new technologies, to new foods, new places. So I noticed that SE is good at like going like this new thing works like I don't know, this new thing it seems to be like they want to experiment with it. They're like, hey, I just want to try it. So he's always up to date. My brother is a very continually updating person. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I think well, SE is always looking for that new input, right? Like that new thing to act on. And so, especially in the tech world, that's like a constant thing, which is like super exciting for SE because there's always something new coming out, something um, you know, different. Whether it's different by like, you know, an inch or a mile, it doesn't matter. It's different. And so you want to figure out what the limits are, and you want to very much about getting your hands on and seeing what you can do with it as an, you know, as an SE user. um, I love tech, and it's one of those things where it's like I have to sit back and be like, okay, how much do I really need this thing versus how much I want to just play with it to see what it's like, you know? Because I'd be all, but I mean, I'm the kind of guy that would be like, oh, you know, a new video card came out for my computer. I gotta, you know, what's the performance differences? You know, is it gonna increase output by, you know, whatever? And you know, it just builds this innate desire to get the newest, best, up to date thing, um, which can definitely be a downfall because it's impossible to keep up with everything, but it's definitely something that is driving, I think, for SE, because it's that next new thing all the time.
Yeah, it's like variety, testing the limits and new. That's so cool. Um, it seems like SE rarely loses track of like what's currently happening too. It's like they're very tuned in to the world.
Yeah, I think that's just part of bringing in your environment, you know, like, um, if you don't know what's happening, it's going to bug you as an SE, because how are you going to know what to do in that in that instance? You know, um, it all comes back to being able to take action, being ready to take action, um, or knowing that when you do take action, you're taking the right action. That TI accuracy in the secondary slot is very powerful for an ESTP. You know, and um, so being able to know that the action you're taking is correct is an important thing. Not to just take action for the sake of being active, but doing the right action.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's so true. I just wanted to affirm you. And with SE, what I noticed is that they're good at noticing like body language or like just how people hold themselves. So if someone has like a really crooked back, or like their body is like this, like, or like there's a awkward sensory to it, it's like, hey, this is like a little off. And it's like SE notices that. And just sensory in general notices that. Does that make
I
sense?
think some of that might have to do with, because we're so focused on our ability to interact with the world around us and our position in relationship to other objects in the world around us, that when we see somebody else, we it's like, okay, what would it feel like to be, you know what I mean, like sensory wise, and it's like, oh, that would be so uncomfortable, that would be impractical for action. You know, is there something I can do to fix it? You know, and I know as we get lower in the functions, you know, the less fluent we are in using them. But I do feel like for ESTPs, that tertiary FE plays a huge role in their interaction. You know, it's kind of what I would attribute any kind of charisma or charm that I might have is definitely all to that FE in that tertiary position. And you know, it's one of those things where it's like, if that person is feeling this way that I would feel in that position, I would want to fix it for them. So it's that social side of trying to take care of and make everybody, the big group, comfortable kind of thing comes into play in a physical sense.
Oh, that's so nice of you. It's like helping people with your dominant function. It's like, oh, hey, you could hold your body in a slightly like more comfortable way for you, bro.
Yeah.
What my brother is really good at too is he's an ESTP and he cracks my back. So I'm supposed to go to a chiropractor. I don't recommend this to other people, but what my brother will do is he searches up chiropractor videos and then he does them on me because he's like, it's too expensive to go out and crack your back. So he's like, let me crack it for you. But like, if it was any other person, it'd feel like, oh, this is unsafe. Like, why would you get like your brother to do it? But he knows how my back is like working, and so he knows exactly where to push it, so it's not dangerous. Like, it feels like legitimate. I've gone to a professional chiropractor. I've gone to my brother. It's like the same thing. Like but my brother, you can feel him knowing where everything is, and I'm like, this feels like a superpower.
Yeah, I mean, I think haven't tried it with chiropractor. I mean, I need to see a chiropractor, and I just have my wife do it. You know, again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everyone, but she went to massage therapy school, so she actually had to like learn a lot of the body lines and all this stuff that make it a lot easier for her. But
Mhm.
you know, and you know, we'll trade massages, and she's like, it's like you can tell exactly where my muscles are tight. Like, you know, like I don't have to say anything and you'll be doing something. You just know where it is and you know how to make it feel better. Right. Like I've had no formal training in, you know, massage or anything, but like I can tell you where somebody's back is extra tight, you know, or if something's not lined up. It just, you can just tell, you know, and I wouldn't know how to explain it to somebody else. Just the way it is,
That's
I guess.
so brilliant. So I'm like soaking in how great of a function this is. And I wonder if this makes it like SE users a bit quicker to learn sports, to learn dancing, because they can tell which specific muscle and where to move. And it's like, or it's like they know what the instructor is moving. So they're picturing how it would feel like to be like the instructor's body. And then they're like, okay, then how do, like, I noticed that they're quick learners in the sense.
Yeah, I think especially in a kinesthetic way, like you were saying, like with dancing or anything like that, like um, SE users tend to be very body self-aware, and able to do things with their body that anybody should be able to do, right? But because not everybody's as self-aware with their own physicalness, you know, like being able to control specific muscle groups just by thinking about it and focusing on it necessarily, you know, that it does make it easier to pick up those moves, whether it is, like you said, a sport or dancing or gymnastics or, you know, I mean, there's a reason ESTPs are overrepresented in those categories because it is something that they can pick up quickly and fine tune the nuance, but also as an SE user, we like to be active. We like to use that because it is a strength for us. It's something we enjoy doing,
Mhm.
you know, and so that's even further drive that it's not just that we're good at it, you know, but it's also fun for us.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like growing with your environment. It's kind of like when your environment moves, you move. Because like with extroverted functions, they get energized by the ping back with the external world. So when the SE user, like when they ping and the world pings back and then they ping, there's this funness to it
Yeah.
where, because extroverted functions all like get energized by the ping back and forth with the external world.
Mm-hmm.
So as the world molds and moves, the SE moves with it, almost like symbiotically.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was just sitting here thinking like, okay, I've been asked many times, okay, so what do you do for fun? Like when you're trying to relax and have a good time, what do you do? Okay, so for me, if I'm confined and need to be, you know, at my home, I'm probably going to, you know, I might play a video game, right? But it's all reactive. It's usually quick moving, first person shooters, things where I'm testing my reflexes, right? If I can go somewhere and do something, things that I've done in the past I love doing is playing a sport, whether it's, you know, basketball, football, baseball, softball, frisbee. I don't care. If it's a sport and I can go play it, I'll probably do it. Unless it's golf. I hate golf. Um, but I also love doing like mud runs, like whether it's you know, the Tough Mudder brand or whatever it is. I've gone and done some of those, and I absolutely love them. I think they're a blast because it's all about one reacting to whatever's in the world around me. I'm not the one that sets up these obstacle courses, so it's like something new's around every corner. But it's also pushing, like, you know, we talked about earlier, pushing boundaries and your capabilities and seeing what you can do, and it's just fun.
Yeah, that's exhilarating, like figuring out your kinesthetic boundaries. It's
Mm-hmm.
like working with mastering the kinesthetic. But it's like it's almost like it's an ability that you refine, but it's not a specific outcome, but it's just enhancing this general ability to react in the moment, that
Mm-hmm.
there's some sort of gratification there.
Yeah.
So what's your relationship with adrenaline?
I love it. I don't get enough of it. No, it's, I've had several adrenaline rushes, and the thing that I've learned to do is, instead of getting hyper with it, because that's what happens with a lot of people, you get this rush and you get like all shaky and out of control, right? Because your body's just starts pumping a million miles an hour. But it's about focusing your calm with the rush.
Mhm.
So it's creating this balance between the rush and your physical action to calming. And so you get to actually maximize the effect of it, if that makes sense. So instead of letting the rush drive you, you're controlling it, and you're able to focus the output of that rush. When I was 12, my family had bought a house that had not been lived in for like 75 years, old farmhouse. And my dad and I were remodeling it. And out the back door was an old shallow well that had a hand pump on it. And we had to, for safety reasons and all that, we had to fill it in. So we had to dig this big hole down to get all the piping and stuff out. And then we had to fill it in with sand because it wouldn't settle. Well, my dad, backing a trailer of sand up to it, went too far, and the weight of the sand pulled the tractor and everything himself on it into this big hole we had dug. And my dad is a big guy. He's like 6'3". He was probably like 230, 240 pounds at the time. I'm 12 years old. I don't think I weighed 100 pounds. But I I heard him, because I was in a different area. I heard him yelling, and I go running around the corner, see him there, and I pull him out of the well, right? Like I reach down, he's down in there, and I grab him under his arms and I just pull him up. And I mean, I know that's adrenaline. There's no physical way I could have done that otherwise. Um, but I was very focused on what needed to happen, how to do it. And that was one of my earliest memories of knowing I had to control my feeling, because I was the only other person there. Nobody else was there to help. So I had to control that rush to accomplish what needed to happen.
That's so cool. It's almost like you're wanting to, it's like you want to capitalize opportunity. I don't know the right word for it, but it's like, in order to have the best relationship with your immediate environment, you also have to have a level of like control over it, because it's like you don't want the environment to just like hit you, and you don't want to be at the mercy of it. So the perfect bliss point is when you're able to act onto it and the environment isn't getting in your way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's like, I didn't used to like, the first couple of times I went on roller coasters, I didn't like them because I had no control, right? And everybody's like, oh, as much as he loves like driving fast and all these things, he's going to love roller coasters. But I didn't, because I had to let go of any semblance of control over what was happening to me, over my environment. And I didn't, like, I don't know the stats of, like maintenance and safety checks and all these things. So I had no control over what was happening, and I just had to trust somebody else. And that was like not a fun thing, and granted, the more I did it, the more I've been able to just relax and enjoy it. But it was definitely something that was a process for me to get used to that. So it's very much about being able to have some hand into the control spectrum of what's happening.
That's interesting, because like if SE is very aware of the opportunities, then it's also very aware of the lack of opportunity. So it's like, well, if I'm put in this situation, then I won't have the opportunity to do what the best, like, I don't know, the best way to enact on reality. And
Right.
then it makes you like feel like, oh, there's SE just knows that where a place has a lack of opportunity and it just like avoids it like the plague, or it doesn't want it.
Definitely doesn't want it. Yeah. No, we want to be able to act on the opportunity. And so if it's just happening to us, that's not what we're looking for. That's not what we're trying to experience.
Yes, so well said. And Daniel, you told me before that you had a period of time where you thought you might be an intuitive too. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I would have been probably about 21. I was in college and had taken a test, a Myers-Briggs test, at the college, and it came back intuitive. And part of it was because I see a lot of possibilities as an SE user. There's a lot of things out there where I can see what could be done, right? Like, oh, I could do this thing or that thing. I'm capable of it. And so that, the concept of opportunities, like we talked about before, being a very NE thing, seeing every possibility out there. And so, yeah, when I tested and the way the tests were worded, it makes you feel like, they'll ask you things like, do you see possibilities, or, or do you just like doing things? Well, I don't like just doing things. I like seeing the possibilities of what I can do, so it's more nuanced than what the questions would be. And that's something that I see a lot in tests, where that, because a lot of the information is written by intuitives, because this is a theory after all, and that's what intuitives love, are theories and possibilities, and the lack of boundaries on the possibilities. It could be all these different things. They kind of wrote a lot of the questions and a lot of the descriptions for sensors in kind of a flat way. They weren't as well rounded and as well fleshed out as to what sensors really are capable of, or how they would really see the world. And so it would minimize, as a sensor, you read the sensor descriptions, and you're like, ew, that sounds terrible. That can't be me, right? I don't want to be that, so I can't be that. And so that's been a struggle in personality type and type theory in general. I feel like for a long time, is to get well-rounded descriptions for sensors and understanding the depth of those functions. And so that's kind of what led to me thinking I was intuitive, is that lack of descriptiveness for sensors.
Yes, that's so well said. The reason why I asked that is because a lot of the ESTPs I know, they come out testing as intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like my brother, if he were to take the test, I'm sure he would get ENTP. He wouldn't get ESTP. But that's because there's either something wrong with the way that tests are currently, except for yours. I like your test with the sensing and intuitive. Like it gets people right a majority of the time, and I'm surprised because normally all my sensor friends get the intuitive result, but on your test they actually get sensor. So like, well, congrats with that.
That's I mean, I have to, all that credit goes to my wife. She knows her stuff inside out, and she was determined to make sure that was one aspect of the test that was as accurate as possible. And part of it is because what she delves into when she's asking the questions between sensor and intuitive is some of the more nuanced things that aren't just as easy to distinguish from the surface. And so, everybody is capable of seeing possibilities. So if you ask someone, do you see possibilities? Anyone can answer yes. But it's about your preference, and realizing, where are you going to go first? Are you going to, as an SE, when I see something happen, I see all the possibilities and things that could happen, but I also see my action in relationship to it, right? And my TI is only going to let me go so far with the things that I see could happen, because it's about accuracy. NE is going to go full spectrum of all the possibilities. And they're going to prefer to just look at the possibilities, not necessarily take action on any one of the possibilities. So it's some of that more nuanced understanding of the functions built into the questions that she's been able to use in a way to help make that more accurate.
Yeah, so I feel like you guys are kind of also like the pioneers of accurate sensor material, because you have Jamie, and you have that test. And I really recommend their website. So please check out Psychology Junkie. And Daniel, I want to ask you more questions. So what SE stereotype do you not relate to?
I think one that I see out there a lot is that they're kind of party animals, right? Like life of the party, center of attention seeking, right? I've never been that way. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's just been my upbringing, and that's possible. I was raised in a very conservative home. So I'm not going to say that doesn't have a factor, because I'm sure it does, but the idea of it even doesn't really appeal to me. I like getting together with maybe a few close friends, but I'm not going to go to like an out and out like rave or crazy party or a house party of somebody I don't know. Like, I would be uncomfortable there. It would not be fun for me. So that's probably one of the biggest ones that to me I've never related to at all. I think that's more of an ESFP thing, maybe.
Could be, possibly. My brother, he likes to say he hates people, but it's just my brother thing. But what makes him an extrovert? Like, it's not the stereotypical extrovertedness, but it's that pinging back and forth with the environment. Do they enjoy that? Like with SE, it's pinging back and forth with the sensory environment. And he gets energized by that, and I see it like that's what makes him an extrovert. Even if the stereotype of extrovert is loves people, some of them hate
Right.
people, guys. My brother, but it's not a core property of extroverts. So that's the point I was trying to make. But yeah, Daniel, any closing thoughts?
I could go on and rant about all kinds of different stuff. I've enjoyed our chat. I think it's good to see more and more people trying to understand sensors and hearing from sensors. You mentioned Jamie helping out and writing on our site, and she's been phenomenal, especially with the SI users, to really understand the depth of what that's like. And even Natalie on Twitter, she's been really great at really pushing out what SI is. So I would just encourage, if you're a sensor, get more involved, try to understand this type theory and have a voice, and to help other people who are interested in this to be able to more easily understand the difference between intuitives and sensors.
That sounds like an awesome mission. I am on board. Yes. And I feel like the sensor intuition thing is one of the big areas that need innovation in typology, because most of my sensor friends think they are intuitive. And if you're new to MBTI, or if like even me, like in the past, I've accidentally mistyped sensors as intuitives, because there's just this huge issue with profiles of sensors being flat. So sensors don't want to identify with it because it's like the lesser profile. But that's why Psychology Junkie is so awesome. You guys have real sensors writing about sensors. And here's why it's so important. Because, when you want to understand someone, you actually have to ask a person who actually uses the function. So if you infer, more likely than not, you may misunderstand the person, because there's only so far that inferences can take you. But for some people, they get inferences right. but for a majority of inferences. Like if you have a fight with a spouse and you infer their intent, if you don't ask your spouse why you fought with them, you're more likely to get their intent wrong or to get what they were trying to do wrong, because you made up something in your mind about them without asking them. So when you tell your spouse, like, oh, you know, I thought that you did this, and then they correct you and they're like, no, I actually meant for it to be like this. And then you have an updated understanding because you're no longer stuck in your own biases, but you consulted with reality. Mm-hmm. So that's like the lesson of sensors. They teach us to consult reality. They teach us to be down to earth. They teach us to remember reality. And they're awesome. And I just, like, sensors don't get enough, like, uplift because they're amazing. They're awesome. If you want to learn more about sensors and just how spectacular they are, go check out Psychology Junkie. Jamie writes fabulous articles there. Daniel is there too, helping, and he's a sensor, so he knows his stuff. And there's Susan Storm. She's lovely and she's kind and she has like a beautiful spirit. So if you want just all of that amazingness, go check out Psychology Junkie. And I hope y'all have a great day. I hope the world treats you well and that you get some good stuff coming your way, guys. I'll see you. Bye.